I don't know if I've shared with you, many of you, if you know, but part of my journey has been my interfaith studies. And I went to the Netherlands to study for a master's degree in interfaith studies. And it was interesting to me that the very first book that I was told to read before I was even allowed to set up my foot on campus was Karen Armstrong's 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. And of course, I had my own copy, which she had signed when I'd met her at St. John the Divine. So I thought, well, now that's interesting. I think this course is going to be right up my alley. And the book itself, the title is deliberate because for those of you who are familiar with the 12-step program, she actually does follow that 12-step model. But it's, of course, the whole ethos of it is to understand the idea of compassion. So in that regard, I'm not going to do all 12, but what I did is I pulled out 10 very brief things that I want to share with you. And I know that there are a lot of note takers amongst us. I'm always love to be in the company of note takers, myself being one of them. So I will, as much as I'm able, I'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that you can note down anything. But here's the first thing that, and perhaps the most important, is that compassion is, as Karen says, it's an inherent quality. You don't have to muster it up or create it. It's something that is inherent in all of us. And I did want to say here that the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would like to have done unto yourself, has been upgraded. And I think I prefer the upgraded version. And it's this. It's the platinum rule. And if any of you have seen the documentary that we shared with you a couple of months ago, I shared it with the kids that I work with. And the platinum rule actually shifts the focus. It's not do unto others as you would like have done to you, because in a way that puts you in the center, but rather do unto others as they would like to have done unto them. And that, to my mind, is an important shift. And I just also wanted to say that they've done a lot of scientific work around compassion, and it actually is a part. It's a neural wave and a neural connection in our neocortex. It's not our reptilian. Our reptilian brain, of course, is the more destructive one, the one that seeks about survival, and the more of the me one. But compassion actually exists, and the feelings that one gets from exercising it in the neocortex. Number 2, the book focuses an awful lot on self-compassion. And of course, it's a little bit like, you know, when you're on an airplane and they say, put the mask on yourself before you can help others. Her call to us is to examine on a regular basis where we exact judgment, harshness, a lack of patience, and unkindness on ourselves. And as we know in the AA 12-step program, there's an inventory. And I think it's good to take an inventory of where you can't be kind to yourself. And let me give you an example, and I don't mind being honest around this, but recently, someone that I had worked quite closely with surprised me, I think shocked me in a way, because he turned on me in a way that I found very upsetting. And it hit me sideways. It took me aback. And his criticism of me was harsh. And it was very easy for me, and I think you'll understand what I mean by this. It was very easy for me to seek out ears that would listen to me complain about how unkind and how unfair he had been to me. And I drew great comfort from people saying to me, oh, what an idiot, or he doesn't know you, or how dare he, that his behavior is outrageous. But then, not one, but 2 people said, And these are people that I know and trust. So I think I had ears to hear them, said to me, well, where do you think he might be right, Pippa? Ouch. And that stopped me in my tracks because I began to think, okay, where in the inventory, I need to find it, own it, be kind to it, and love it. Love, of course, is what softens and changes our hard edges. And it was an incredibly interesting self-examination as to where he might be holding a mirror back to me and how I was going to deal with that. Number 3, the book talks an awful lot about cultivating mindful practice, mindfulness practices in our lives. And the mindfulness practices are in, but also out, even small gestures, practices that increase our mindfulness and awareness of ourselves and others. The Buddha says, of course, that awareness is the key that unlocks everything. And to not push away or reject, but rather to welcome and recognize and accept uncomfortable things, difficult people, tough situations, welcome them, as Rumi says, to the table, and ask, what is it trying to tell me? What do I need to attend to? You know, that old adage of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I was reminded as I was planning for today, in the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, there is that whole discipline, mindfulness discipline of right speech. And I have to be honest and tell you that I don't like it. I really, and I don't think any of us do, really don't like it when I feel that people say things about me. And especially if I find out and I think, ooh, that feels a bit unfair. Or how do, you know, what gives them the right to say that about me? And yet, if you really take that mindfulness approach, I then have to ask myself, well, how often do I criticize other people? How often do I have a little moan to either my partner or to other people in my circles about it? So it's okay for me to do it to others, but I, of course, don't like it done to me. So that whole idea of hate speech, I think, is something that we talk about a lot in today's world. But hate speech is, I think, is something that we have to guard in our daily practice. Hate speech about towards ourselves as well as towards others. Number 4, little acts of kindness. I'll tell you a true story, and I think this was before I became a regular contributor to our services. This was in May 2022. It's actually on the 23rd of May. I don't know if any of you know the story, but I used to have a little Vespa, a little scooter. It was my easy way of getting around the city that doesn't have any public transport to speak of. And I had an accident. A truck came and knocked me off, and I broke my back in 2 places. And there was that terrible moment when I was lying on the asphalt of the road. And of course, I'd stopped traffic. At one point, there was even a helicopter above me, I think, because I'd caused traffic disturbance. And I knew instinctively that I had done myself terrible damage. And I was very, very frightened of what the extent of that damage could be. And a woman who, because of where I was lying and the way that I was lying, I never saw her face. But she came and she kneeled behind me and she put her hand on my forehead and another hand on the back of my head and just said to me, "It's okay, dear. I'm going to stay with you until the ambulance arrives." And I recognized that from the words, I could see she was praying. And I could see that she mentioned Jesus's name. So I thought, okay, she must be a Christian. But she was praying. But there was one thing she said. And she said to me, "Do not fear," she said. "All will be well. I see you dancing again. Now, I went on a tremendous journey of healing towards getting over not only the physical recovery, but also the psychological recovery. When you break your back, it does something to you. And I remember months down the line when I was at a jazz event and I was up enjoying the music and I was dancing, and suddenly the words came back to me. And I thought, my goodness, this is a moment, this is an answer to her prayer. Now, I didn't know who she was, and I decided to track her down. It took me several weeks to try and track her down, but I eventually did. And I wanted to say, your small act of kindness, where you didn't introduce yourself, you didn't make any fanfare, you were there till the ambulance arrived, and then you disappeared, was a game changer for me. So Karen says, don't underestimate even the small gestures. And I'm going to just speed through the last remaining ones. In number 5, don't assume you know other people. Make room to encounter them and in their fullness. We don't know everybody. It's impossible to know everybody. What makes them tick? We think we do, but of course we don't. Number 6, an active way to produce compassion is to listen. How many of us actually struggle to listen when we have strong opinions? But a greatest act, Karen reminds us, is to sit and listen. 7, she says, to guard against tribalism and to keep that door open so that we don't seal ourselves off into our tribal huddles, because tribalism, she said, is our undoing. 8 is to fill our lives with knowledge and broaden our vision. And one of the things that I absolutely love about our community is that we are dedicated to doing this, and long may we continue to fill our knowledge gaps and broaden how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we see our world. Number 9 is to find your mission. I remember a dear colleague of mine here in Cape Town said, it's very easy to get distracted, he said, but find your wall and keep pushing against it. Find your wall and keep pushing against it. And number 10, learn how to make room in our lives and our hearts and our minds for our enemies. And I'm going to end with this. As you may know, many of you may know, I was in New York on September the 11th. And as we know, in the fallout from it, amongst many things, there was a sweep of Islamophobia. And this time in my life pointed at me, and I realized that I had Muslim friends, colleagues, neighbors even, and I knew nothing about them. I said that I was interested in other faiths, but I'd never read the Quran. And my active choice not to engage in it, I understood all the reasons why this was going on and raging on, but I thought, no, I want to find out. I want to find out what's at the heart of a tradition and a practice and a belief that I know nothing about. And that decision actually ended up putting me on the road to interfaith, which of course has led me here with you today. That one choice to move against what I didn't know towards learning more. And to end with this, part of the reason that I was asked to speak on the panel is that I too was a victim of gender-based violence growing up. And it's been a long road in my own life of loosening the grip of hatred on my own heart. And as I was reminded yesterday through the events that I'll share with you also a little bit later before we finish, one drop at a time, one action, one moment of compassion and kindness at a time helps to loosen it more and more. And the understanding that I have cultivated in my own life is that if we are interconnected, it's not just a kumbaya thing, but if I have hatred in my heart, then in the interconnectedness, I transmit that as well. So it is a constant journey. And Karen is very clear about that in her book. And let me end with one of my favorite prayers, and it's this. Peace in my heart brings peace to my family. Peace in my family brings peace to my community. Peace in my community brings peace in my nation. And peace in my nation brings peace to the world. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Thank you, everybody.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.